Arthur's family truth. I almost didn't pick up unknown number. Then he said, Dale, it's Hank, the electrician. A pause. Come home right now. Another pause, and come alone. I didn't ask anything. I just grabbed my keys. Something wasn't right. He didn't sound scared. That's what bothered me. The whole drive back, he didn't call again, and that made it worse. What I found in that workshop didn't make sense. Not yet. But it explained everything. Let me tell you why. Before I tell you what I found, you need to understand who my wife was. Carol noticed things most people would miss. Small things, numbers that didn't quite add up, details that didn't belong where they should have. She'd been a school librarian for over 20 years, and she carried that same mindset into everything else in life. Order mattered to her. Patterns mattered. If something was out of place, she didn't ignore it. She followed it until it made sense. We were married 31 years. Long enough that I stopped questioning the way she paid attention to things. And long enough that I learned she was almost never wrong. That workshop out back used to be her space. Her father built it decades ago, and after he passed, she kept it exactly the way he left it. Tools lined up in a way only she understood. Every drawer organized. Every surface clean. I didn't go out there much, not because I couldn't, but because it still felt like stepping into something that belonged to her. And after she died, I left it mostly untouched. The wiring out there was old. Older than it should have been. I'd been putting off fixing it for months. Eventually, I hired someone to take a look, gave him the key, told him to take his time. At that point, I didn't think there was anything in that workshop worth worrying about. I was wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, Hank was standing outside the workshop door with his hands in his jacket pockets. Broad-shouldered guy, gray beard, the kind of face that doesn't give much away. He watched me get out of the car and waited until I walked all the way over before he said a single word. I found something, he said. Kept his voice low. Inside the wall cavity on the north side. I want you to see it before I say anything else. He led me inside. The workshop smelled the same as it always had, sawdust, cold air, the faint chemical smell of old insulation. Hank had pulled back a section of drywall about halfway up the north wall, exposing the knob and tube wiring he'd come to replace. But right next to the wiring, sitting in the wall cavity like it had been placed there on purpose, was a metal lockbox. Gray, combination dial on the front. The kind you'd find at any hardware store. It wasn't just sitting loose in there, Hank said. Somebody screwed a bracket into the stud. It was mounted. Deliberate. I stood there and just looked at it for a moment. I haven't touched it, he said. I figured that was your call to make. I knew the combination before I even thought about it. Carol used the same 4-digit code for everything that needed one, our oldest grandson's birthday. I crouched down in front of the box, turned the dial, and the latch clicked open. Inside, a USB drive. A small notebook with a brown cardboard cover, the exact kind Carol used to keep in her apron pocket when she was out here working. And underneath those two things, a sealed envelope with my name written on the front. Her handwriting. I sat down on the cold floor of that workshop, and I didn't move for a long time. I thanked Hank, paid him for the weekend, and asked him to come back the following week to finish the job. He looked at me for a second, not prying, just checking, and asked if I was doing all right. I told him honestly that I didn't know yet. He nodded the way guys from the Upper Peninsula nod when they understand that some things don't have a clean answer, picked up his tools and left without another word. I respected him for that. I brought the lockbox inside and set it on the kitchen table. Made coffee, sat across from it like it was going to tell me something just from me staring at it. Carol had hidden that box before she died. She had screwed the bracket into the stud herself. She had locked it, sealed the wall back over it, and trusted that someday someone would find it. She wanted it found eventually, otherwise, why leave anything at all? But she hadn't wanted it found by accident or by the wrong person. My wife did not do things without reasons. I opened the notebook first. Her handwriting was small and even. Letters packed close together, neat rows, no wasted space, exactly like her. She had been keeping dated entries going back almost 2 years before she died. The first pages were calm. Observational. She had noticed something, an $8,000 withdrawal from our joint investment account. The bank record described it as an authorized transfer. She had circled the word authorized and written a question mark next to it. She had brought it to Floyd Darby, our financial advisor. Floyd had been managing our retirement accounts for 11 years. He was the kind of guy who sent a card at Christmas and remembered your grandkids' names. We trusted him completely. According to the notebook, Floyd told Carol it was a routine portfolio rebalancing fee, pre-authorized in the original contract they'd signed when they first brought him on. He pulled out his copy and showed her a page. 2 weeks later, Carol wrote, "My copy of the contract doesn't have that clause. The page numbers skip. Pages 7 and 8 are missing. Floyd's version has a page 7A. I put the notebook down, went to the filing cabinet in the spare bedroom, and pulled out our copy of the original investment contract. Found it in under 2 minutes. Carol had organized every document in that cabinet, labeled and alphabetical. She had been right. Our copy jumped from page 6 straight to page 9. I had signed that contract without noticing the gap. 11 years ago, I had never once gone back to look. Carol had noticed, and she had started keeping records. Over the months that followed, she had tracked 7 more transfers, amounts ranging from $4,000 to $18 and $500, all described in the same kind of language, all unauthorized, as far as she could figure. The total came to just under $74,000. I had to stop and sit with that for a minute. $74,000. That's not a rounding error. That's not a fee buried in fine print. That's retirement money. Money we had spent 30 years putting away. And someone had been quietly helping himself to it for years, while we shook his hand at our annual meetings and told him about our grandkids. But that wasn't the part that stopped my breathing. Midway through the notebook, the entries changed. Carol had started feeling tired, not normal tired, but the kind that doesn't go away after a good night's sleep. Heart palpitations, shortness of breath that came and went without any obvious cause. She went to see Dr. Earl Sutton, her GP. He ran blood work and an ECG and told her she had early signs of arrhythmia. Not uncommon in women her age, he said. Manageable with medication and lifestyle changes. She started the prescription. The symptoms got worse. And then in the margin of one entry in handwriting that was a little less controlled than usual, like she had written it fast or with her hands shaking. The supplements. When did I start taking them? Check the date. I remembered the supplements. About 18 months before Carol died, a package had arrived in the mail. One of those wellness gift boxes, tea bags, a small candle, a collection of herbal supplement capsules in brown bottles. Carol told me it was magnesium. Good for sleep, good for the heart. She had started taking them every morning without fail. I couldn't immediately remember who had sent it. The notebook told me 3 entries later. The package was from Floyd. He mailed it after our November annual meeting. The card in his handwriting said his wife swore by the brand. I have been taking these capsules for 16 months. Then the line I have not been able to stop thinking about since. I don't think I should take them anymore, but I need to be sure first. I need to save one and have it tested. If I'm wrong, I don't want to destroy someone's life over paranoia. If I'm right, I need evidence. She had been building a case. Alone quietly, sick and getting sicker, and still methodical, still the librarian, still making sure she had the right evidence before she said a word to anyone, including me. The last entry in the notebook was dated 11 days before she died. I have been too slow. I trusted the process too much. I should have gone to the police 6 months ago. Dale will find this. He will know what to do. I love him. I'm sorry I didn't tell him sooner. I was trying to protect him from the possibility that I might be wrong. I wasn't wrong. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after reading that. The coffee had gone cold. The light through the window had shifted from the white of a Michigan morning to the flat gray of a February afternoon, and I just sat there. I don't own a laptop anymore, gave mine to Sandra when I retired. So I drove over to her place. She lives about 20 minutes away with her husband and my 2 grandkids. I told her I needed to borrow her computer for a few hours, that it was related to her mother's estate. She looked at me the way she's looked at me since Carol died. That careful, quiet worry that she tries to keep off her face but doesn't quite manage. She asked if everything was okay. I told her the truth. I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. She sat me down at the kitchen table, brought me a cup of coffee, and left me alone. That's my daughter. She knew not to ask more than I was ready to give. The USB drive had 2 things on it. First, a folder of scanned documents, copies of bank statements going back 2 years. The investment contract, both the version Carol had and a printed copy of what Floyd had shown her with that extra page 7A. A printed email exchange between Carol and Floyd spanning about 8 months, where she asked careful questions and he gave smooth, reassuring answers. Reading those emails, knowing what I know now, it made my stomach turn. He was good at it. Patient. Never rattled. Every response calibrated just enough to send her back to her own doubt. Second, an audio file. 47 minutes long. Recorded on Carol's phone. It was her voice. She was sitting across from Floyd Darby in what I recognized, just from the ambient sound, the faint street noise through the window as his office on Washington Street downtown. She had recorded the entire conversation without his knowledge. This was 4 months before she died. I want to be careful about how I describe what was on that recording because the details matter. Floyd did not confess. He was too careful for that. But when Carol walked him through the missing contract pages, when she laid out the transfer history one by one, when she asked him directly whether those withdrawals had been properly authorized, his answers were not the answers of an innocent man. He deflected. He explained things slowly, like he was talking to someone who needed things simplified. He told her she was probably misremembering the paperwork from the original onboarding process, that it had been a long time ago, that these things were complicated, that most clients found the details confusing. At one point, he suggested that maybe her husband, meaning me, could come in for a follow-up meeting so Floyd could walk us both through the account history together. Like she needed a chaperone to understand her own finances. He mentioned twice in that easy, almost concerned tone of his that stress and health issues could sometimes affect a person's clarity around numbers and dates. Carol didn't take the bait. She just kept asking questions. Calm, specific, documented questions. I could hear the librarian in her, the same voice she used when she was tracking down a missing reference. Not aggressive. Just precise and patient and completely immovable. And then, near the end of the recording, she said it. Floyd, I've had one of the capsules from that gift package tested. I want you to know that. 4 seconds of silence. I've listened to that part of the recording more times than I can count. 4 seconds doesn't sound like much. But when you're listening to it knowing what I know, knowing what those capsules contained, knowing what they did to her over 16 months, those 4 seconds sound like a man deciding very quickly what to do next. Then Floyd said, I think you should be careful about making accusations you can't support. Carol said, I'm not making an accusation. I'm telling you what I've done, Floyd said. Talk to your doctor about your stress levels, Carol. Seriously, I'm genuinely concerned about you. And then the recording ended. That was his response to being told the capsules had been analyzed. Not confusion, not offense. Not the natural reaction of a man who had simply sent a wellness gift to a longtime client and had no idea what she was implying. 4 seconds of silence, and then a pivot to making her sound unstable. I drove home from Sandra's slowly. The kind of slow you drive when your mind is somewhere else entirely and you know it. When I got home, I opened the envelope, 2 pages, handwritten. I'm not going to share all of it. Some of it is between Carol and me, the kind of things a woman says to her husband of 31 years when she believes she may be running out of time, and she wants to make sure he knows certain things before she's gone. I'll keep that part where it belongs, but the part that's relevant here, I don't have proof the capsules hurt me. The woman at the testing lab said the results were inconclusive but notable. She found trace amounts of something she couldn't fully identify without more sophisticated analysis. I was going to take the results to a toxicologist. I ran out of time and energy. The capsules are in the blue tin in the bottom drawer of my craft desk. The one that locks, the small brass key on my keyring, the one you always asked me about. Please have them properly tested. Please go to the police with everything in this box. And please don't go to Floyd alone. Don't confront him alone. He is not who we thought he was. I found the blue tin exactly where she said it would be. I want to be honest about something. I had the impulse. That sudden, burning impulse that comes to men my age who have lost someone to drive straight to Floyd's office on a Tuesday morning, walk in without an appointment, and put every page of that notebook on his desk and watch his face. I wanted to do that more than I've wanted most things in recent memory. I didn't. Carol had told me not to, and she had been right about everything else. Instead, I called a lawyer. Judith Carey. I'd met her through the church, civil litigation practice. I laid out everything over the phone, start to finish. She was quiet through most of it. When I finished, she didn't say anything dramatic. She just said, Dale, I need you to bring me everything in that box tomorrow morning. Don't make copies. Don't contact Floyd. Don't talk to anyone outside your immediate family. I asked her whether she thought Carol had been deliberately harmed. She paused. Then, I think we need to let the right people answer that question. But what you've described, if it holds up, is serious. Seriously serious. I brought her everything the next morning. Judith moved fast. Within 10 days, she had connected with Detective Lorraine Marsh at the Marquette County Sheriff's Office, who worked financial crimes alongside the Michigan State Police Unit. Detective Marsh reviewed the documents, listened to the full 47-minute recording, and arranged for the contents of the blue tin to be sent to a forensic toxicology lab downstate. The results came back 6 weeks later. The capsules contained digitalis glycoside, a compound derived from the foxglove plant. In small, controlled doses, it's used in cardiac medication. In larger or sustained amounts, it's toxic. Prolonged ingestion over months can cause arrhythmia, chronic fatigue, and heart irregularities that, to a general practitioner running a standard ECG, look exactly like naturally developing cardiac disease. Carol had no pre-existing heart condition before she started taking those capsules. Her medical records confirmed it. Dr. Sutton confirmed it. She had been perfectly healthy the last time she'd had a full workup, about 3 months before the wellness package arrived in the mail. She had been slowly poisoned over 16 months. And when she had started to suspect it, she had been too sick, too careful, and too alone in what she knew to stop it in time. Floyd Darby was arrested on a Wednesday morning in April. The charges included fraud, theft over $5,000, and, after another 8 months of investigation, criminal negligence causing death. The DA told Judith the last charge would be difficult to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, given the indirect nature of how the poisoning was administered. I understood that. The process of justice and the experience of justice aren't always the same thing. I've had to make my peace with the gap between the two. Floyd's financial advisor license was revoked permanently. The case was referred to the SEC. He will never manage another person's retirement account. The civil suit, which Judith pursued on a separate track, resulted in a settlement that returned most of the $74,000 plus significant additional damages. I donated a portion of it to the cardiology unit at UP Health System Marquette. It felt like the right place for it. Floyd served 14 months on the fraud conviction. The criminal negligence charge was eventually stayed due to a procedural issue with the toxicology chain of custody, something about how the samples had been logged and transferred. Judith explained it clearly. I understood it in my head. I can't say I absorbed it the way I would have liked to. What the investigation also turned up, and this is the part I've had the hardest time sitting with, was Roy. Roy Nolan had been in serious financial trouble for 3 years before Carol died. Gambling debts, and on top of that, a stack of high-interest online loans that had compounded into something he couldn't manage on his own. The investigators traced a series of small cash deposits into Roy's account, $2,000 here, $1,500 there, spread out over the same 16 months Carol had been getting sick, back through a chain of transfers to an account connected to Floyd. Roy had told Floyd about our retirement accounts, how much was in them roughly. That Carol was the one who paid close attention to the finances, who would notice if something looked off. He said he hadn't known what Floyd was actually going to do with the information. He told investigators he thought Floyd was just going to shift some money around quietly, that Carol might not catch it, that he had needed the cash and had told himself it was basically a loan he'd pay back someday, and that he had tried very hard not to think too carefully about what he was actually participating in. I have known Roy for 31 years. He was at the hospital when Carol died. He held her hand. He spoke at her funeral and cried in front of everyone, and I stood next to him and put my arm around him because I thought we were both just two people who had lost someone we loved. Near the end of the notebook, in one of Carol's final entries, there was a single line I almost missed. I think Roy told someone about our accounts. I can't prove it yet. I can't tell Dale. He and Roy are close. It would destroy him before I know for certain. She had been protecting me from that too. Even while she was dying, Roy took a plea deal. Reduced charge in exchange for his full cooperation with the prosecution against Floyd. I haven't spoken to him since the day the investigators came to his door. I don't say that with anger. The heat of it has mostly passed, with time. I say it because I genuinely don't know how to be in the same room as someone who helped set in motion what happened to Carol, and I've stopped forcing myself to find an answer I'm not ready for. I still live in the house on the edge of Marquette. Hank Pruitt finished rewiring the workshop the following week, same as we'd agreed. I've started going out there in the evenings. Slowly, at first, the way you re-enter a space that belonged to someone you loved when you're still figuring out whether using it is a way of honoring them or a way of letting them go. I've been making a birdhouse. It's not a good one. The joints aren't tight and one side sits about a quarter-inch lower than it should. Carol would have looked at it, said nothing for a second, and then walked over and shown me exactly where I went wrong and how to fix it without making me feel bad about it. That was her way. I finished it last spring, hung it on the oak tree at the back of the yard, the one Carol used to sit under in the evenings. She had mentioned more than once that she wanted birds in that yard when the weather turned warm. I don't know yet if the right birds have found it, but it's out there. Before I hung it, I stood in the workshop for a while, just stood there with the smell of sawdust and the pegboard with her tools still in their order. And I thought about a woman with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead, sitting at her craft desk late at night, writing careful notes about things she was afraid to say out loud. Making sure the evidence was organized, making sure I would find it. The envelope she left me, I've read it many times now. There's a line near the end I keep coming back to more than the others. You always trusted people more easily than I did. I love that about you. Don't stop trusting people. Just be willing to look carefully at the ones who are very close. I think about that a lot, about the difference between suspicion and just paying attention, about how the people most capable of hurting you are almost always the ones you've already decided in advance that you trust without question. Carol understood that. She held it clearly, even at the end, even while she was sick and scared and keeping all of it to herself because she wanted to be sure before she said a word. She documented everything. She locked it in a wall. She trusted that I would find it. She was right to trust that. She was also the bravest person I have ever known. The people who love you most aren't always the ones who tell you everything is fine. Sometimes they're the ones quietly making sure the truth survives them. If this story made you think about the people closest to you or the accounts you haven't looked at in a while, hit the like button and share it with someone you trust. It might be worth the conversation. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. These stories don't get told enough.